Good morning. My name's Torey. I'm less of an expert on grape phenolics than most of you in the room, but my current job in the food industry has made me catch up quite a bit. What I'll be presenting today is really more about extending the harvest that you already do. So I'm not specifically speaking to wine grape harvest for winemaking. I'm talking more about what happens to the pumice. So this is a really terrible picture, but this is an example of how terribly we treat the grapes that leave our wineries. And this is where I pick up. This is where I pick up the story. This is a seed separation operation, and basically there's a rotary screen and an auger and a skip loader, and it's an affront to the pumice people like myself out there. I work for a company called Sonoma and Whole Vine Products, and basically what we do is we look for that higher, better use of the compounds that are found naturally in the grape skins and seeds and pulp. The reason I have this picture up here is it highlights some of the efforts or some of the processes you go through to improve the quality of the envisioned end product, which is wine. This is Green Drop at Raisin, and it's really all about improving quality rather than getting the quantity, higher volume of grapes through the door. What this does is it concentrates the phenolics, it concentrates all of the aromatics and that sort of thing, and it leads to a better end product that's a higher value add. When you bring the grapes in more concentrated. This is basically the group of compounds we're interested in. Anthocyanins, cyanidin, malvidin, petunidin. This is a vial of about 20 nanograms of pure malvidin 3-glucoside that we recovered from some Merlot skins. And we made a few hundred of these vials thinking that we could send them to researchers. So if you know of any researchers who are interested in following on with Binden's work, using little microvinification trials. We have pure malvidin 3-glucoside. I'm happy to send her a few of these. The other groups, flavanothiols, flavonols, stilbenoids, such as resveratrol, much belabored name, and tannins are found in various portions of the grape. And Kennedy had this really nice illustration that he ripped off from somebody that shows where the anthocyanins are, the procyanidins, the proanthocyanidins, etc. And what Binden goes on also to show in her paper is that the higher the concentration of pulp material in your fermentation, the more selective the pool of phenolics. Selectively, the pool of phenolics is changed. So if you have a higher pulp concentration, the more seed tannin will be pulled out of the pool of overall phenolics in that fermentation. I'm not a winemaker, I'm not a wine grower, but to me that would be significant if I didn't have these harsh seed tannins put in there into my wine. Of the flavonoids, we have epicatechin, gallocatechin. These are the sort of basic, simple forms of catechin. You see that they have different hydroxyl groups on one of the rings there, and those make them more reactive with iron or enzymes further down the track in organisms, for example, like humans. Quercetin is very interesting because it has this vicinal dihydroxy group right here, which makes it very reactive. And so it's less bioavailable to humans, whereas, and it's a flavonol as opposed to a flavanol. But it's reactive nonetheless in very different ways. And this impacts the bioavailability. When I mean bioavailability, I mean for people or organisms to uptake this as a nutrient, because there are people out there in the cocoa industry, or actually in the medicine industry, who view cocoa flavanols, the negative isomer of epicatechin, as a vitamin and crucial to life, to human life, as part of your diet. This is an example again of the gallocatechin. Miracetin. It's very highly bioavailable and has a pretty long half-life in your blood at micromolar concentrations. And you would say, well, that doesn't seem like it's going to do very much in a micromolar concentration. But when you consider the complexity of the human diet, everything plays a role. And this is considered an antioxidant, although it's probably just preventing inflammation through the reduction of oxidative complexes. So camphorol, this one's very interesting because you find it a lot in white wines, and it's actually been implicated in increasing bone density, specifically in women. There was a paper that talked about camphorol in white wine. A glass of white wine a day actually improved bone density in the study of 17,000 women over 2 years. An interesting coincidence, but it makes me want to drink white wine. It also reduces inflammatory response, which could be correlated to these other diseases that we see, or decreases in health, what we would consider healthy. Another very interesting one, which you would think is too big to be bioavailable or useful, is procyanidin C1, but it has been directly correlated to vascular health and easing the tension in the vasculature through a nitric oxide induced mechanism. So we make nitric oxide, we make hydrogen peroxide. It's all related to inflammation and other aspects of our very complex beings and metabolism. This epicatechin, as you can see, also has this vicinal dihydroxy, but in a trimer, it's more protected, and it gets to places like the gut, the human gut, where we have microorganisms that break it down and make it more absorbable. So it's somewhat protected in this form and gets farther into the system. So what do flavonoids do? What do grape flavonoids do? They fill dietary gaps. So if I only eat at McDonald's and Starbucks for the rest of my life, I will have dietary gaps. I will be missing those things that I find in my baby lettuce and my microgreens and my carrots and grape in my wine. And what's true around the world is more advanced societies have wider gaps in their nutrition and thus their health, like metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And so dietary polyphenols fill those gaps, and it may be due to an antioxidant activity or increased nitric oxide production or just decreased inflammation. The gross picture is we're left with fiber that is full of trace minerals and these polyphenols, which we know are very good for us. It's just that since World War II, we've decided that we need to process these things out of the food stream because they're bitter or they make it less controllable when it comes to a manufacturing process. So having polyphenols in your diet is a good thing, but sometimes technology gets in the way. This is just a very simple example of some breads that were made by Gary Howe up at the Wheat Marketing Institute up in Portland, and he used our Chardonnay pumice powder to see if he could extend shelf life in a Wonder Bread, basically, example. And he did. He got 3 more days of shelf life, which is invaluable if you're the Wonder Bread people, because that's 3 more days you didn't have to make product to put on the shelf. It has anti-staling properties because it prevents syneresis from water, syneresis from the inside to the outside of the loaf. It keeps moisture where it should stay, or where it was originally. Which also means if you're a baker, you're selling more water, which is actually a dirty secret of the bakery industry, but good if you're a bakery. It actually lowered the pH and increased the TA and acted as a yeast enhancer, a food for the yeast, fertilizer for the yeast. So it could strengthen the process there. Again, back to Other opportunities, natural red food color. There are companies that make concentrates. You can add the concentrates at fermentation, perhaps to stabilize or to induce more tannin extraction into your wine. The great thing about grape skin as a natural, or anthocyanins as a natural food colorant, is at low pH, there are very few choices for a very deep concentrated red at low concentration. And that's exactly what you have in a wine. It's red after 100 years. It still pours red out of a bottle. And it's you won't see that in yam or cabbage or beet. So lots of different applications for these same polyphenols that you're farming. I represent the beginning of a sub-market, if you will. And I'm hoping that instead of putting the stuff on the ground in the future, we can continue the harvest and turn it into more value-added products. So that's my out-of-the-box discussion of phenolics, the continuation of your harvest. Thank you. We have a few minutes. A few minutes if anybody has a... Yes, sir.
How did that bread taste?
The what?
The difference in the bread.
It was interesting. We had a consumer panel of 60 people, and they liked it between 2% and 4%. It added more character to the bread. It wasn't just white bread. Over 6%, it started to feel. They said it started to taste healthy. But at 6%, you could see it looks more like a pumpernickel or a dark unmilled, unrefined wheat bread. And bakeries want to control for that kind of impression. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.